YouTube, Uberman here. So today, doing something a little bit differently. I've got a radiator leak in my Optima. It's been a persistent little sucker. I've had it to the dealer attempted to fix on it, they couldn't fix it, and because somebody replaced the radiator with an aftermarket unit, they would not replace it under warranty. The Kia dealership wanted over $400 for the part alone, and that didn't include labor. So here's what we're doing today. 2013 Kia Optima SX Turbo. You're going to need the appropriate radiator, which should look something very similar to this. Make sure you've got your lines for the automatic transmission, and very importantly, make sure you have your drain cock installed, or petcock, depending on what you want to call it, before you go through all the trouble of removing your old radiator. Now, on top of that, make sure you've got a couple gallons of coolant. Really, Kia uses some pretty cheap generic coolant, so you don't need anything special. This stuff right here will do the trick. Get yourself a couple gallons of it. May need a little bit more, you may need a little bit less. We'll find out at the end of the video. Tools should be fairly simple. I don't think I'm going to need any screwdrivers, but a flathead and a Phillips is always a good idea to have on hand, just in case. Have your smartphone next to you. You never know when you might need Google. Something doesn't come off exactly the way you think it should. 3/8 drive ratchet and 1/4 inch ratchet. Very basic tools here, guys. I don't anticipate needing anything more than 8 and 10 millimeters. In fact, I'm pretty sure I can do this whole job with probably a Phillips screwdriver to get a couple of these plastic tabs off, and a 10 millimeter. I don't see anything, pliers. I will need pliers, so I will have to run back there and get some of those to get the hose clamps off. Let's get started. Okay, so first step, make sure your car is cold. You don't want to start taking apart the cooling system on a hot vehicle, so if you've been driving it, let it cool off for a couple hours before you go getting into this. You can start by grabbing this hose, this upper hose here, and I can feel that it's barely even warm anymore, and squeeze it. You don't want to take this cap off and get sprayed with coolant. So I can squeeze the hose. There's no pressure on the cooling system at all. The cap is cold, so we'll slowly crack it open and hold pressure on the cap just in case there is any pressure and you don't want to get sprayed in the face, and gently remove it. And as we can see, there's no issues here, no pressure. The cooling system is good and cold. You've got this hose right here that leads over to your coolant overflow reservoir. Go ahead and pull that hose off, and I recommend sticking the hose down in it so you don't lose track of where it goes. Next, we need to drain the coolant. So it's kind of hard to show you, and I'd have to take my camera off of the tripod, but it's very self-explanatory, guys. Follow where the cap goes here. Follow it straight down to the bottom of the radiator, all the way down, and there is a petcock. You can feel it. Just unscrew it. Of course, have something to catch the coolant. Yeah, I don't, but you can see right here is the dealership tried to put silicone on it to prevent it from leaking. That's a dealership job right there. Needless to say, that didn't solve the problem. So while that's draining, let's move on to taking some parts off here. I haven't read any directions on this. I've been a mechanic since, well, I've been doing this over 20 years, so I don't need instructions on how to change out a radiator. I'll figure it out as I go. Looks like the coolant is just about finished draining, so let's move on to taking some of these parts off so we can gain access to the radiator itself. Looking at what I've got in front of me here, I'm going to say the first thing that we're going to want to get out of the way is this air intake snorkel. Looks like it's held on by two 10 millimeter bolts here, and it probably just pops off from the actual air cleaner housing over here. We'll find out for sure here in just a second. So I've got a 10 millimeter bolt right here. Looks like it holds the upper radiator hose onto the fan shroud. So I want to keep this separate, and the hose just pulls off right here. So next we'll get our channel locks, and let's go ahead and remove this upper radiator hose altogether. Just squeeze the clamp, move it out of the way, twist, and being a newer car, these things will come off fairly easily. Find somewhere to tuck it away where it's going to stay out of your work area here. So far, guys, this is relatively easy. Next, I see a bolt down here. Probably hard to see where my finger's pointing right here. There's a 10 millimeter that is holding the fan shroud to the radiator. Basically, the entire cooling fan and shroud comes out as an assembly. There should be 2 of these bolts. This one right here. And again, be careful not to lose these or lose track. I'm going to set the fan shroud bolts on top of the windshield wiper. Now over here we have another one, and these should be the only 2 bolts that attach the cooling fan assembly to the radiator. And at this point, other than a wiring connector, it should be ready to come out. And it is. So next you've got this connector. This is a pretty big connector here, and we're going to want to get this off of the vehicle. It looks like you just push down. I don't know if you can see that, but right here, so you push on the back of the connector, the furthest outside of the radiator, and from the looks of it, there's a snap clip down here that you pull up. There's also going to be a snap clip over here. It's a little harder to get to. And the fan assembly comes out like so. Okay, set this off to the side, out of your way, and we have a whole lot more room to work with here. Again, probably impossible to see, but you have 2 transmission lines. I don't think you can see, probably not, but you have to dip your hand kind of in here by the battery, and you have 2 transmission lines, very easy to see, flat heads. We're going to disconnect those lines, and then we're also going to need to disconnect the lower radiator hose. Now, we're pretty much to the point where we're going to be pulling this radiator out, so we need to get everything off of the top here. There is a partial core support right here, from what I can tell. There are a couple little plastic Phillips clips in there, so we're going to go ahead and remove those, and then it should just be a matter of a couple little bolts. And what I do is I just take my fingernail and stick it up under the lip, and then you should just be able to pull these plastic clips out. Okay guys, change of plans here. What I'm doing is I really don't want to take this whole upper core support here off if I don't have to. So what I did as I pulled the radiator forwards, pulled off the mounting brackets right here, and the radiator will just lift up, but you still have the air conditioning lines attached, you have the condenser attached, so what you have to do is there's clips on the sides here. You have to pull these clips back, and you'll have to separate the condenser from the radiator. So now you're going to have to reach under this front grille here, and there's a tab on the back of the radiator. Pull it, there you go, and pull up on the core support, and the radiator is free. Now this is a time to be very careful. You have condenser lines for your air conditioning, and you have your condenser, which is now loose behind the radiator. You want to try your best not to hit this condenser with anything, not to let it bump up against too much, or you end up losing all your Freon. You'll be doing this entire job over again from scratch. We're going to go in exact same way we had to come out. If I were you, I'd go ahead and remove these caps now, because I don't know how much clearance we're going to have once we're in there. Also guys, if you're going to change the radiator, just angle her down in here a little bit. It should drop right in. Pretty simple. Nothing too complicated about that. Make sure the drain cock is tight. Guys, if you're going to change out your radiator and you're changing your antifreeze, which I just had it flushed, which kind of sucks because that was a waste, but replace your radiator cap, guys. You know, doesn't make any sense not to. I don't have a new one yet, but I can assure you as soon as I get done installing this and test driving it, I will be going to the dealership to pick up a brand new cap. I would not recommend an aftermarket one. Alright guys, let's go ahead and lock this sucker down. So you have your plug-in right here, which is basically your fan control. This controls the speed of your cooling fan. And this fan, theoretically speaking, should just drop right in. There's a couple tabs on each side that have to line up. And we are lined up. Now you're going to have 2 bolts with yellow. I don't know if you can see that, but they have yellow. So far, guys, everything's been a 10mm. Just go ahead and finger start them. Alright. These don't have to be tight at all, guys. Go ahead and finger tighten them and then hit it with a ratchet just a hair, maybe a quarter to half of a turn. Keep in mind that you're tightening into plastic here, so be careful. Actually, it looks like it's going to be a little more than that. Tighten it till you feel it get snug, and then just a hair more. Nothing more than that. Let's plug in your fan control. Make sure you hear that click. And just to be safe, I always recheck my clamps, just to make sure I've got them tight enough before we go put everything back together. And they're good. So now we can put the upper hose on, which fits into this. It's kind of interesting how this works, but get that upper hose on, and then we'll slide it right here. We've got that on there. Find my channel locks. Let's get this clamp locked down. Deal. Let's not forget our coolant overflow hose that we took off earlier. Make sure we've got that on there, and it secures down into the windshield washer reservoir as well. For the snorkel, have red dots on them. Go ahead and take all my tools out from under the hood here so that nothing gets forgotten or lost. Set them down over here. Super torque any of this down. This is all just rubber and plastic pieces here. Okay. And I do know I haven't tightened this one down yet. I'm not going to. I will tighten it here in just a little bit. Next step is to reach down, make sure your drain cock is secure. And this one is. It's getting tight. Let's grab our coolant. Let's fill it up and check for any leaks. And I will. I know I spilled just a little bit. I will clean this all off. I'll wash it down with a little bit of fresh water after we're done. Needless to say, that was not a full gallon. I'll probably need to go get some more coolant, but up. Air pockets out of it. And I think 1 1/4 gallons might be plenty. Alright, make sure we fill up the overflow reservoir as well to the full mark. We're full in the reservoir. And it's going to continue sucking it down because there's lots of little air pockets in here. You'll see the bubbles, and that's completely normal. I've got my coolant reservoir filled up, so we can close that. And basically what we're going to do now is we're going to give it a few minutes to bleed the air out of itself. We're going to leave the cap off. We're not going to start it up. Just give the radiator time to bleed down, suck up that coolant, get the air pockets out of the engine, and then we'll keep adding coolant to it until it stops bubbling. Let's go ahead and fire her up. Alright, the bubbles seem to have subsided. We'll go ahead and leave the car sitting with the radiator open. I'll probably leave it sitting for a good half hour or so, and then come back and check on it. I'll rinse everything down, and it'll be time for a test drive. I got to go pick my brother up. He's about a 40-mile round trip, so that'll give it a pretty good opportunity to get good and hot and dry off on the drive, and then when we'll get back, I'll check for any more leaks, and that's exactly what you should do. Take it on a good run, verify there's no leaks, close her down. As always, guys, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you.